You're listening to the Eternal Health Podcast, where we discuss God's great design for your life in body, mind, and spirit. Your host is Laura Rimmer, who's a plant-based nutritionist, author, speaker, and health coach. Looking for yoga tips or the latest protein shake recommendations? Sorry, you're in the wrong place. If you're ready for no-nonsense, multi-layered health expertise drawing on evidence-based nutrition and biblical principles, welcome to Eternal Health. For show notes and to download your free 5-minute Optimum Health Scorecard, please visit laurarimmer.com. Enjoy the show.
Well, welcome to Eternal Health. I'm here today with Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Joel Fuhrman MD is a board-certified family physician, 6 times New York best-selling author, and internationally recognized expert on nutrition and natural healing, and he specializes in prevention and reversing disease through nutritional methods. Dr. Fuhrman coined the term Nutritarian to describe his eating style, which is built around a diet of nutrient-dense, plant-rich foods. Dr. Fuhrman has authored numerous research articles, published in medical journals, is on the faculty of Northern Arizona University Health Science Division, and he serves as president of the Nutritional Research Foundation. For over 25 years, Dr. Fuhrman has shown that it is possible to achieve sustainable weight loss and to reverse heart disease, diabetes, and many other illnesses using smart nutrition. In his medical practice and through his books and television specials, he continues to bring this life-saving message to literally hundreds of thousands of people all around the world. So I'm so excited to have Dr. Fuhrman here today on the show on Eternal Health. So welcome, Dr. Fuhrman.
Thank you. Excited to be here and talk to you today.
Great. So your new book has just been released, Fast Food Genocide, and that's going to be the main topic of our conversation today. So before we get into that, could you just, for anyone who doesn't know who you are and the work you do, how did you get into this line of nutritional-based work, with what you do?
You know, I'm very passionate about this, and I'm in my mid-60s, but when I was a competitive figure skater when I was like 16 to 19, 20 years old, my father was overweight and sickly. He got his health back by reading nutrition books and changing his diet. I ate very healthfully for better stamina on the sports circuit. You know, in training, I was actually second in the United States in pairs figure skating in 1973. And so I ate healthy back as a teenager, and I was, into my early 20s. So I was, when I got hurt and left that part of my life and moved forward, I was starting to work in my family's shoe business. They had a chain of shoe stores, but I realized my passion was really nutrition, and I wanted to go back to medical school, to pursue a career as a physician, but as a physician specializing in nutrition. So I dropped all my work. I quit that work, went back to the pre-med course at Columbia, and then went to medical school when I was in my late 20s. So I've been tremendously grateful to have this career that has been so exciting, to impact so many people and see them reverse their diseases and get well again. It's been such a thrilling opportunity for me. So I'm really grateful for that. Watching people get well from rheumatoid arthritis, reverse their diabetes, get rid of their headaches, their pain, their psoriasis. It's just nutritional excellence gives you such tremendous tools to enable people to get well. And of course, we're talking about letting the world and the population know that you don't have to have heart attacks, you don't have to have strokes, you don't have to get demented. That nutritional science has made such tremendous advances to prevent cancer, to live longer, to be healthier than ever before in human history. And people aren't taking advantage of these scientific advances. And they're so confused about all the misinformation and conflicting information. They just throw their hands up and don't know what to do. And I've been a voice to try to straighten out the confusion and to try to enable people to take control of their health. And it's been very exciting for me.
Yeah, you certainly have. I mean, I know you've sold millions of books and touched millions of lives in a positive way. So wonderful that you do that. You mentioned, nutritional excellence. What do you mean by that?
Well, I coined that term nutritarian to represent a diet that's designed to maximize human lifespan. Originally, when I started my work, about 40 years ago doing this, and I wrote and I started to write, I realized that my niche wasn't to try to devise information or a message that would be the most popular, that would sell the most books, that would be what people would like to hear. Rather, I wanted to describe what would be the ideal to maximize health and longevity. And when you apply a diet style that maximizes human longevity and slows aging radically, then when you apply it therapeutically to diseases like psoriasis and heart disease and diabetes, it's most effective at reversing those diseases at the same time. So what I'm saying by nutritional excellence is a diet that is moderately lower in calories than most people are eating, especially in this country where people are overeating calories. But it maximizes the exposure to micronutrients like vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and phytochemicals. So it gives you the full exposure to the non-caloric nutrients humans need while not exceeding our requirement for calories. So what I'm saying here is that excess fat, excess carbohydrate, and excess protein, whenever you consume more calories than you need, it speeds up the aging process. Whereas if you consume a little less calories than you require, it lowers your body temperature, it reduces the respiratory quotient so you're not breathing off as many calories. It lowers your thyroid a little bit. And in other words, it has the effect to maintain your own body weight. You're not going to get too thin. You'll just slow your metabolism a little bit, which you're slowing the aging process. Because the whole world has this confused the other way around. They're trying to speed up their metabolic rate so they can eat more food and not get fat. I'm trying to have people slow down the metabolic rate so they can eat less food and not get too thin. So in other words, and we're saying when you do that, then you've unleashed or revealed the secret of human longevity. It's the fountain of youth because you age much slower. You live much longer. So we're talking here about making each calorie count and eating more micronutrients per each caloric buck. And when you eat a lot of foods that are micronutrient rich per calorie, it naturally suppresses your appetite. It naturally makes you no longer desire to overeat calories. And we're not willy-nilly trying to starve ourselves of calories. We're just trying to eat more high nutrient, low calorie food so we naturally feel satisfied with less calories. So it's all about eating right so you're not driven to overeat. And what I'm saying right now is when you eat oil and when you eat sugar and when you eat junk food and when you eat processed foods, it drives cravings, overeating behaviors, and it makes you not feel well when you're not digesting food. So you're driven to keep putting in your food too much food in your body. So the whole picture of this, or the first basic principle, is eating more healthy foods, more nutrient-rich foods, as the means of being able to control your appetite and prevent overeating.
Okay. What would you say to people who would say, Dr. Fuhrman, that's all very well. We can, potentially increase our lifespan by eating these nutrient-rich foods, lower calorie foods. But Do you know what? I just like eating fast foods. I like eating unhealthy foods because it tastes good. And if it knocks off maybe 5 years, 10 years of my life, I'm willing to live with that. What would you say to those people?
Well, that is the way that food addicts talk and how they think. Even when you're a smoker or an alcoholic, you're always coming up with illogical and delusional rationalizations why it's okay to continue your addiction. The problem is that in this country, mental illness affects 1 in 5 people. And the processed foods and commercial baked goods and fast foods are linked to depression in a dose-dependent manner. What I'm saying right now is even 2 servings of commercial baked goods like bagels and croissants and cookies and donuts and French fries. In other words, 2 servings a week doubles your lifetime risk of developing depression, and it goes up from there. And the people that don't develop major depression get an effect on limiting their concentration, lowering their intelligence, increasing the rate that they develop dementia, and putting a fog over their clarity of thinking. So and also lowering their enthusiasm, happiness, and excitement about life, even when they don't have major depression. So we're talking about that when you eat poorly, it doesn't just take 5 years off your life. It takes the last 30 years of your life and usually makes it miserable, makes you medically dependent, makes you no longer concentrate. You don't have your full intellectual power. You certainly don't have your physical ability to enjoy life and do physical things that you could when you were younger. You're living, but you're barely living. And also those foods deaden your taste buds as well. So you don't even enjoy food as much as you think. So you think that you are enjoying your life more. It's like the smoker thinks they're enjoying their life more. And they say, well, I'm all stressed out right now. My son smashed up the car. My husband lost his job. I'll just smoke. Maybe I'll quit later. But you know what? The smoking is a major cause of the stress because you can't solve the problems in your life effectively when your life and your decisions revolve around sustaining your addiction. When you're a food addict, having to eat sweets, having to eat overeat foods, and your health is not good, you're not enjoying your life more. You've deadened your taste, you've deadened your smell. So now a strawberry doesn't even taste good to you anymore. So they think they can't enjoy natural foods because they're not willing to put into the time, the few months it takes to re-challenge their taste buds, to retrain them to get back the health of their taste and their smell so they can enjoy natural foods again. The point I'm making right now is when you learn the recipes and when you give enough time to cultivate improving your taste as you improve your health, then eating a Nutritarian diet becomes more pleasurable than your prior diet, not less pleasurable. We know it's painful for people to stop smoking. We know it's painful to stop snorting cocaine and to stop eating unhealthy foods. It's a temporary period of being uncomfortable, and it's a temporary period of food not tasting as good, sure. But the question is it worth the discomfort in changing your life to add not 5 years, but to add 20 years of your life? And we're not just adding 20 years. You're adding because you're losing those years of life, but the years before that you're alive, you're suffering. And who wants to be in a nursing home, unable to think straight, or can't even, or stroked out their body, or can't take care of their health? In other words, people are suffering needlessly and tragically, and nutrition is at the root of these problems. And when I use that term fast food genocide, I'm using that term genocide because people don't have any idea the damage that's occurring in the modern world. For example, in urban areas where fast foods and processed foods are eaten more frequently, we see 7 times the risk of stroke. Before the age 45, people living in nursing homes in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who stroked out. Wow. We're seeing tremendous increase in mental illness, more crime, more anger, and half the people who are incarcerated in federal prisons in the United States today are there because of nonviolent drug-related offense. Drug-related, criminal behavior. And what I'm saying right now is that's traced back more closely with candy and fast food and processed foods than it is with any other parameter. More than poverty, more than bad parents, more than lack of parenting, more than no parents, more than social isolation. The most critical and robust association is the consumption between junk food and drug abuse, because these are the gateway drugs. What I'm saying is sugar and candy are the gateway drugs to opiate addiction and to drug addiction and to alcoholism, because people live for their addictive stimulation. Because when the more you eat sweets and the more you eat junk food, it deadens down the dopamine receptors in the brain. So you no longer get a high from eating food. You got to look for more food, more ice cream, more sugar, more volume of food. And your whole life revolves around sustaining and maintaining your addictions, and not about creativity, and not about intellectual advancement, not about what you're going to accomplish in the world, and not about having goodwill for other people, and not about grouping together with other people to get things done that are constructive. In other words, it takes away your ability to have a fully constructive and life that's meaningful. And it takes away your ability to care for your loved ones and to be a good parent or a good father or a good mother. In other words, your addictions drive your behaviors. And the rationalization is, I'll just live a shorter life, but I'll still smoke, I'll still snort, I'll still eat junk food, I'll still be overweight, I'll still be unhealthy. It's irrational thought thinking.
It's totally shocking. And do you know what? When I read this in your book, it totally blew my mind. The fact that there's so much more going on. We tend to think fast food, has negative implications on our bodily health, mental health, right, to a smaller or larger extent. But you've just blown open the whole remit of how fast food affects our life in a negative way. So let's talk about your book then. So the title, Fast Food Genocide, it is a shocking title for the book, and you've touched on some of the things why you've called it that. What inspired you to write this book, and go into more detail on why it's causing such genocide?
Right. Well, I've written 12 books, and I think that what inspired me to write this book is like when I'm researching a book and collecting, maybe each book has, let's say, 500 to 700 scientific references in the book. Mm-hmm. Now, in order to collect 500 references that are relevant for that book, I've had to maybe read 10,000 or 7,000 to 10,000 scientific studies to pull out the 500 that are most relevant for that book, right? And in collecting those studies, you recognize there's a whole lot of information that's ripe for another book, not for this book. It's not about reversing diabetes, but it's about the problems that are occurring in people eating more fast foods and how it's destroying our genes in future generations and causing childhood cancer and autism and brain tumors. And so I'm uncovering information. And then in this country, we see a lot of increased illness in urban communities where people of color live. And you know that there's a lot of, how should you say, there's some degree of bigotry and racism that is perpetuated by the medical profession and what we learn in medical school. Because we learn in medical school that Black Americans have, higher rates of diabetes and obesity and leg amputation and blindness and more crime and less educated, and they're not becoming as educated, or they're not achieving economic potential. And it's blamed almost on the color of their skin or their race. And I've showed in this book, for example, many different things. I showed that when you track what people are eating and what their environment enables them to eat by the access to supermarket food or fast food or junk food in convenience stores, whatever the color of your skin, even in areas where white people are living, if you have bad access to food, you have just as much crime and just as much diabetes and just as much obesity. So I showed that it's not an issue of skin color. It's an issue of food access and information. And I traced it back in human history, showing that after the slaves were released, after Black Americans became free after the Civil War, there were more centenarians, more living to 100 years old. They had longer lifespans than the southern whites, than the southern white people were having. They were achieving educational opportunities and advancement economically. And then when the white supremacy movement came into the United States and tried to put more violence against blacks, which moved them into the inner cities, and then the World War II came, and we had a disease called pellagra that occurred that caused more violence in the South, that the medical profession denied had anything to do with nutrition. So I went through the history and how the white supremacy movement actually spurred the growth of Nazism in Germany and Hitler. And actually, Hitler's white supremacy ideas originated in the United States, in the southern and in California and the southern United States. Originally started against Black Americans when the slaves were free. So I went back to this history and I showed how nutrition affected the United States history and damaged people and damaged their brains and damaged their chance for achievement and created more racism and violence. And I brought it back to even today, where we still have people living in urban areas in America, which we call food deserts, where people are unable to access fresh produce and fruits and vegetables and beans and nuts, and how that's taking away their opportunity for advancement and the realization of this idea of equality and equal opportunity for all Americans. So this book has a tremendous social message. It has a message about how we're trying to solve our healthcare crisis from the top down by legislating laws of who's paying for this, and it never can work. Because we have too many sick people, and we have a growing army, a growing number of people that are getting sicker and sicker and more obese. And I show that people living in those areas of the country without good access to produce, who are developing diabetes and obesity at such high levels, have years of potential life lost, of 45 years of potential life lost if you're living in these urban areas where you have lack of supermarket access. It's not 5 years of life you're losing. It's 45 years of life you're losing in some of these areas. So I'm using that term genocide to bring awareness to what's happening in areas of the country where people are being very damaged tragically by not eating healthfully. I'm using it to demonstrate the bigotry that's occurred because we're blaming bad outcomes on people's genetics and not on the food that they're eating or the food they have access to, number two. And number three, people aren't aware that when you eat poorly, when you have fast food and commercial baked goods and processed foods and barbecue and processed meats, which the World Health Organization has declared a class 1 carcinogen, by the way, same as in the same category as asbestos. Yeah. But when you eat these foods, it also damages your genes. And you have methylation defects and epigenetic changes that are passed on to future generations. And now we have children being born with autism and an explosion in learning disabilities and attention disorder. And we have children now with childhood cancers and brain tumors. And what I'm saying is the science traces that back to not just what the mother ate when they were pregnant, but what both parents ate before they even conceived the child. That you can damage your eggs and your sperm, and you can damage the cells that you leave on to future generations, and we can magnify the propensity for ill health, and we can damage our future generations. And we're seeing an explosion of these diseases of allergies and autism and brain disorders and learning problems that we never saw in earlier generations. And cancer was relatively unknown hundreds of years ago, and we're seeing an explosion of these diseases even occurring at earlier ages. And I think that it's relevant to talk about how we're damaging the genes being passed on to future generations and the deep tentacles and reach that eating junk food and fast food and candy and processed foods has to the future of humans, are based on our own health and passed on to future generations and the environment of the earth and what we're doing to the earth. So I think that there's a tremendous message in this book that people have to understand deeply for change to occur. And so I think I'm passionate about it because I think that if people know the right information, they can make better decisions, they can make the right decisions, we can turn things around, and we can help millions of people.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that fast food has wide-ranging implications across society, across future generations, not only in shortening lifespan, but also the years that we're living are going to be full of addictions and cravings and less ability to concentrate, less bodily health. So it's really affecting all areas of life is what I'm getting from this. What does the average person, the average parent, do then in the face of this?
Well, given all that negative message I just gave of how risky and damaging fast food are, on the other hand, I have a message of hope too. And that is that we can actually live longer than ever before. We can protect our children against cancer in their future. We can wipe out almost all breast and prostate cancer. We don't have to be demented when we get older. Our children don't have to have these diseases that are afflicting everybody else, that we can have a better life, but we have to achieve that through knowledge. And, it shouldn't be just reading, writing, and arithmetic. It has to be reading, writing, and arithmetic and nutritional science, because this nutritional information is the most critical data and the most critical body of knowledge that affects our future and our careers and our happiness and our emotional and our physical well-being. The whole thing is affected by what we eat. And by giving parents the tools to take care of their children properly, we hold our children in our arms, we brush their teeth, we put them to bed at night, we tell them a story, we put on their seatbelts in the car, but then we let them eat candy and junk food, and we ruin their brains, and we decrease their intelligence, and we increase the risk of cancer, and we destroy their future by giving them junk, and we think that's good for them. So we really have to know better. And I'm also showing how great healthy food can taste. I'm also my 30 years of experience in this food and my team in making great tasting desserts and soups and chilies and whatever we're talking about. We're not talking about decreasing pleasure in life through eating. We're talking about increasing pleasure in life through eating and having your health at the same time. So in the book Fast Food Genocide, I have lots of great recipes to appeal to people who may think that, oh well, that's not going to taste good enough. I don't want to be too healthy. I'd rather eat what I feel like eating. And I'm showing them, you may be giving up some time, it may be some effort. There's certainly effort needs to be paid attention to with anything that gives you tremendous benefit. You don't get something for nothing. You have to put some effort in here. But this is a delicious way to eat. And when you're eating in a way that's tasty and also protects your brain and your health, you feel emotionally more stable about it. And it gets rid of your fear, because so many people are living in fear of heart attacks and strokes and dementia and cancer. And fear is not a good thing for your health to live with. And fear doesn't make your quality of your life high. We want to live with excitement and freedom and optimism, and we want to make every day fun and get things and accomplish things in our day. And, so I think that when you eat right, you're feeling well, your brain, you have an unlimited amount of energy. You can do physical sports that are exciting and fun to do in your later years. You can do challenging things with your mind. So we can do things and we can enjoy good food at the same time.
Absolutely. And you know, I know exactly what you're talking about firsthand, because as a student at university at 19 years old, I felt like an old woman. I was tired, lethargic, couldn't concentrate. I was eating Subway sandwiches for lunch, McDonald's for evening meal, and some kind of fried breakfast every day. And that just took its toll. Fast forward a few years, I cut all that out. I was also smoking about 10 cigarettes a day, drinking. Really? Yeah. And I just felt like an old woman. I started studying nutrition, reading your books, reading lots of other doctors' books, and really got into this. And now at the age of 38 almost, I'm an ultra marathon runner. I feel fantastic. You know, I'm writing books, I'm running a business, I'm serving in church, and so I know what you're talking about. Life, it needs to be lived, doesn't it? And food plays such a vital part in that. Just to be clear.
And, you know, and people don't realize, because you mentioned French fries, I think, that, you know, eating fried foods and stuff, but, you know, because people say, oh, well, you just have it in moderation. It's not going to cause that much damage. But what does the studies show? The studies show that one serving of commercial French fries a week increases risk of breast or prostate cancer more than 25%. Just one serving a week. Because you know what they do? They don't just fry the food. They fry it in oil that's been heated for hours. Yeah. And it's cooked. The same food is cooked in the other food's oil, and the oil, as it gets cooked and heated for long periods of time, it's carcinogenic.
Absolutely.
You know, these fast foods are carcinogenic.
Yeah, hydrogenated fats, aren't they?
Right.
So what would you say to people, because I'm vegan and I speak at a lot of vegan events, I know a lot of vegans and people who are really into a plant-based diet, and I've heard you speak about this before. You say that the vegan diet isn't the kind of be-all and end-all, because there's many vegans who are unhealthy. So what would you say is, and also just want to throw this into the mix, you talk about gbombs, so food you recommend. So what is the perfect kind of diet in your view?
Well, I wanted to, you know, we talked about the diet to be nutrient rich. Yeah. We also want it to be hormonally favorable. And to be hormonally favorable means you can't be overweight. Mm-hmm. Because when you're overweight, your body is producing extra estrogen and extra angiogenesis promoters, and it makes you insulin resistant. So that anything you eat, you have a heightened insulin response to. So in other words, if you're an overweight vegan, you're not healthy. Mm-hmm. You know. And if you're eating processed foods and junk foods, there are plenty of vegan junk foods. And as we just mentioned, potato chips and French fries could be vegan, right? Yeah. And soda and white bread. And here's the thing is that white bread and pizza and bagels break down into the bloodstream as glucose, and they enter the bloodstream rapidly as sugar. It's the same as eating candy. There's no significant difference between marshmallows, candy, and white bread. It's all junk food. It's brain damaging. It causes dementia, and it causes heart disease. And vegans get cancer and heart disease from eating white flour and junk food. Mm-hmm. And they should be examples of good health, and they have higher risk of depression as well. And they have higher risk of depression, and also there's this arm of, how should I say, of the vegan community, these low-fat vegans that are afraid to eat nuts and seeds. Yes. Because they think lower in fat is better, and they're not taking DHA or EPA for the brain, and they not only increase the risk of depression, but they develop brain shrinkage with aging and increases the risk of developing dementia in later in life. So what I'm saying is this, is that I advocate a vegan diet, but it's a special type of a vegan diet. Mm-hmm. It's full of gbombs. Yeah. So I want people to eat gbombs, which are, it stands for gbombs, greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. And this acronym is developed because any one of these foods taken individually has been shown to radically reduce rates of cancer like breast cancer. Green cruciferous vegetables, eaten in higher amounts, decrease risk of dying of breast cancer among breast cancer patients who have cancer, for example, by 50% or more. Flax seeds shown to reduce risk of death by 71% in people who have breast cancer. Read some malignance from flax seeds. Mushrooms to prevent breast cancer developing by more than 64%. What I'm saying is you take any one of these foods and they're very protective. But a Nutritarian diet puts together a full portfolio of foods that have individually been shown in scientific studies to dramatically protect against cancer. And we include these foods in a diet of all those foods in the diet. We get the full symphony of phytochemicals and antioxidants humans need to maximize immune function. So it's not just a a vegan diet, it's a very healthy vegan diet. And if you don't want to be a vegan, then we allow people to have a small amount of animal product, but keep it restricted because as you increase animal products in the diet, it increases hormones that promote cellular replication, growth hormones like IGF-1, and pro-inflammatory molecules that can accelerate heart disease. But people have to recognize it's not just animal products that promote heart disease and cancer. It's also these processed carbohydrates. And too much in the vegan movement, they make the animal products the villain without giving an equal amount of attention to the processed carbohydrates and the fried foods that are just as bad. And the second thing I alluded to, which I want to clarify, is that eating nuts and seeds like sesame seeds and flax seeds and chia seeds extend human lifespan, prevent cancer. Eating walnuts and pistachio nuts protect the heart against arrhythmias and protect the brain from shrinkage. And that more than half of people on a vegan diet who are not supplementing with a source of EPA or DHA don't genetically make enough of those nutrients to secure proper brain size with aging into your 80s or 90s or 100 years old. And taking a low dose of EPA or DHA as a supplement is useful to prevent brain shrinkage with aging. There's a cavalier and irresponsible attitude among vegans that as long as you take B12, that's all you need. You're doing okay. And you're going to live a long time and not have problems. And that's not true. In my 30 years of medical practice caring for this community, too many of these people developed depression or dementia because they were B12 deficient, they were vitamin D deficient, or mostly because they were deficient in DHA. And they needed to have that checked, and they needed to take a little DHA to assure adequacy. And their nutritional gurus telling them that a vegan diet is adequate and they don't need any supplements was sold them out and damaged their brains. And it has to stop.
Wow. Okay. One of your previous books, The End of Diabetes, you say that following a Nutritarian diet can literally reverse diabetes. And I've seen that in people I work with and other doctors I've interviewed, people like Dr. Neil Barnard. So what's your take on this? Can we reverse diabetes with diet then?
So my book and also the studies I've published and the studies I'm doing in my care with patients over the last 30 years has shown that almost all type 2 diabetics can become non-diabetic. And I published that pilot study that showed that 9 out of 10 people who were diabetic became completely non-diabetic within 6 months. Much more aggressive, much more dramatic results than other people are reporting through a Nutritarian diet, because it's better designed to reverse diabetes because it's lower glycemic as well. It's not just vegan, it's also lower glycemic and has these nutrient-rich low foods that are high in resistant starch and high in these slowly digestible carbohydrates. So it's very effective at reversing diabetes and obesity. And, and diabetes happens in more prevalent and more people are overweight because being overweight contributes to it. So if you drop a lot of weight, most often your diabetes is going to go away. And we know that when people go through gastric bypass or lap bands and they lose a lot of weight, their diabetes can go away and within a few weeks even because they stop eating as much food. But we don't need to have lap bands or gastric bypass or surgery to do this. You just have to learn how to eat right. So we're talking about designing a diet style to maximally reverse diabetes in type 2 diabetics and extend human lifespan. And for people with heart disease, like high blood pressure, and taking statin drugs to lower their cholesterol. These drugs increase the risk of cancer, significantly so, too. And people aren't given informed consent. They're not told about the danger of the drugs and not told about a lot of the diabetic medications people are taking cause weight gain and accelerate the progression of their diabetes so they become more diabetic. And it shortens their lifespan, not lengthens it. So what I'm saying now is that people have all their faith in the medical profession and the drugs are going to save them. And what I'm saying is if they really knew how ineffective, risky, and futile it was to take the drugs, in many cases accelerating your demise, many millions or more people would embrace nutritional excellence as a means of getting well. So that's right. I have a book called The End of Diabetes where I want every person with pre-diabetes or diabetes to do this and get rid of their diabetes, not go to doctors and get drugs. And I have a book called The End of Heart Disease where I want people not to take blood pressure medications and not to take cholesterol drugs, but to get their weight back and to get rid of earn a low cholesterol, earn a normal blood pressure with excellent nutrition. That's the only way you can protect yourself with heart disease. If you're thinking you're protecting yourself by taking drugs, that's foolish. You're not. As a matter of fact, the more drugs you take, the more you're at risk of premature death. So when you're controlling your blood pressure to a favorable range with drugs, you don't have a normal blood pressure. It's a fake normal blood pressure.
Yeah.
It's artificially lowered with medication. It doesn't, so the problem is still there and still causing damage. And then the drugs gave you that permission slip to keep eating the same diet that caused the blood vessel damage to begin with. So the inevitable consequence is you're going to age yourself prematurely, and the damage is going to continue at a rate that's actually faster. You're going to continue the damage at an increased rate from taking the medications.
Mm-hmm.
If we never had medications, doctors would be forced to tell people they got to start eating right, losing weight, exercising, eating vegetables, getting the salt out of their diet. They'd be forced to give people eat healthier. Mm-hmm. Now they don't have to have people live healthier. Just give them a drug and people just think they're doing okay now,
Yeah, sure. So just to be clear, am I right in thinking then that the Nutritarian diet that you promote is the same diet across the board? So whether you've got a patient with diabetes or heart disease or cancer, it's the same approach?
No.
Okay.
I might, a person who has diabetes, I'm not going to let them have dates and raisins or fruit, or I might be more strict in the desserts. They can have the fresh fruit like the berries and the one fruit with each meal, but I'm not going to give them but I'm going to design the diet a little more, especially people who are very overweight and poorly controlled diabetes. I want to make the diet a little more aggressive to reverse their diabetes and get them off the medications as quickly as possible.
Okay.
So a person who's just like you and me, who are just eating it for health, can be don't have to be quite that strict with it. But even with us, when I'm making a dessert, let's say I'm making a chocolate ice cream where I'm whipping up a frozen banana with some macadamia nuts and some vanilla powder. When I want to put a little unsweetened cocoa powder in, I'll put one medjool date to sweeten it. I won't put 3 medjool dates in for us, but with the diabetic, I'll put no dates in. I'll make a berry sorbet and I'll have no dates added to it at all. I'll just keep their glucose, the amount of glucose in each meal lower. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right. So what are 3 foods that you would say people need to just eliminate from their diet altogether because they're that unhealthy?
Well, fried foods, foods that are cooked in oil, because when you heat oil at high temperature, you cause carcinogenic changes that have tremendous damage and propensity for cancer. So we're talking about French fries and chips and fried squid and fried onion rings and whatever fried foods, of course. And then, of course, we're talking about foods made with white flour. And that includes bread and cookies and cake that people are eating. That's got to come out of your diet. And the third thing is that people don't recognize is putting oil all over their food. Because oil, we're talking here about even a little bit of extra calories a day, it shortens your lifespan. And when you take oil, it doesn't turn off the appestat. It turns up the appestat. Like if you were going to eat a lunch and taking the food at a buffet, and I gave you an apple on your way to lunch as you were going to collect food, you'd eat 65 calories less because the apple would have filled you up with 65 calories. But if I gave you a teaspoon of olive oil, 120 calories, a tablespoon of olive oil, you wouldn't eat any calories less. You'd actually eat more calories. Wow. Oil drives the overconsumption of calories. And when you eat walnuts instead of walnut oil and sesame seeds instead of sesame oil and sunflower seeds instead of sunflower oil, when you eat the whole food, the fat calories enter the bloodstream like an IV drip, a little by little over hours, keeping you from being hungry. And your body burns it for energy. When you take oil, it's absorbed so rapidly that it's stored as fat. It makes people get fat, and they don't recognize how the oil is the major contributor to their extra body, to the extra fat they have around their waist. Mm-hmm. Even though it may not be as dangerous as French fries and as sugar and white flour, it's still, I'm not mentioning the common things like, barbecued meats and things like that, because we know they're carcinogenic, but I'm talking about the mistakes people usually make. Mm-hmm. The fried foods, the oily foods, and the white flour is where they're usually going wrong.
Okay. All right. Just on the subject of oil, what do you think of things like tahini and nut butters, which are obviously not fully refined, but are more refined than the whole nut or seed?
It depends. I think they're good. They're good if they're raw, but I think that you can make tahini from whole sesame seeds or from unhulled sesame seeds. Mm-hmm. And I'd rather you make your own or get it from the whole sesame seed, which has the whole nutrients and the fiber and the shell as well. So I don't think so. Those are okay foods, but when you're eating a walnut or a sesame seed, the sterols and the stanols and the fibers bind fat like a fat magnet. So it carries fat out into the toilet bowl. So all the fat calories don't even come into the bloodstream. They're not all biologically accessible to the body. When you eat oil, they flood the bloodstream very rapidly, and they all lead to weight gain. The fat magnets, the nuts and seeds bind fat so tightly that they actually suck cholesterol out of the bloodstream into the digestive tract. And they carry that cholesterol out in the stool, and they carry saturated fat out into the stool. So they have negative fat effects in that they're reducing that, so you're not absorbing all those calories. The same thing beans do, because all the carbohydrate calories in beans are not accessible to the body because they can't be broken down by digestive enzymes. They're called resistant starch. And the resistant starch is converted by bacteria into short-chain fatty acids, which push more fat in the stool, which have anti-inflammatory and anti-diabetic effects. So you get these anti-diabetic effects and these weight loss benefits from eating the whole nut and seed over the oil from the seed. So I'm really trying to get people to put salad dressings by blending the nuts with some tomato sauce and roasted garlic and vinegar, not by putting oil and vinegar. We're talking about blending the whole nut with vinegar. Yeah. Not oil and vinegar, it's sunflower seeds and almonds and vinegar and roasted garlics and tomato sauce and fig vinegar and a little bit of prune, and you mix it up and you make a great dressing. Or it's an orange whipped with some sesame seeds and cashews and blood orange vinegar and a squeeze of lemon. I'm making great dressings that taste fantastic, but it's a different biological effect when you get the whole food as compared to the oil.
Okay, all right, brilliant. So just before we wrap up, and you let us know where we can find you online and get your book from. So say I'm your listener now, and the diet that I'm currently on is pretty unhealthy. I'm recognizing some of the things that you're talking about that we should be avoiding: fried foods, animal-based foods, white flour, that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, yep, okay, I'm sold. I'm going to give this a go, just to prepare that person, because, and I've heard you talk about this before, because we're often addicted to foods, it is like coming off of smoking or an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction. So just to prepare that person, what are the side effects that they can experience short term? How long will that period be? And what are the benefits that they can reap, in the longer term?
Sure. So that's right. People temporarily feel fatigued when they first come off their food, and between meals, when they're not eating as many calories, they start to feel shaky, a little bit of anxious. What I'm saying is they could even feel a little headachy. Some people, in other words, you feel a little bit worse when you eat healthfully as your body's going into a phase of detoxification, but that most often only lasts 2 or 3 days. By the 4th day, most people are feeling well again. And by the 5th day, almost everybody's feeling okay. It's usually the only first 2 or 3 days. So you don't have to fear. You might feel a little tired or mostly a little increased fatigue the first few days is the major side effect. The problem is that the natural foods without salt and sugar don't taste as flavorful to people, and that they don't understand that's going to take a few months. That takes 3 to 4 months for their taste buds to get stronger, because your taste buds are deadened by salted foods and by oily foods and by highly sugary foods and by all the commercial baked goods. It weakens your taste. So a strawberry doesn't have much flavor. A cashew nut doesn't have subtle flavors. An avocado doesn't taste like much to people because their taste has been weakened. So just be patient. Stick with the program. Eat your big salad every day. Use a healthy dressing. Make a big pot of soup on the weekends where you have the vegetable juices and the mushrooms and the onions and the green vegetables and the beans in there, and take it to work with you every day. And you'd be surprised that we can retrain the taste buds, retrain people to like this food more, and they'll learn a whole repertoire of recipes that'll taste really great as they're making this transition. So I'm hoping to be able to be of assistance to them to make the transition easier, to make it doable, and to make this tremendously powerful in making their lives healthier and happier.
And you've got great recipes in all of your books, haven't you? So
thank you. Yeah, I'm really proud of those really great recipes.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so thanks so much. It's been a really interesting interview, and really wonderful work that you're doing. So just want to thank you for that. And if you could let us know, where's the best place to find you online and get your book, Fast Food Genocide?
Right. Well, Fast Food Genocide, I think you can get anywhere, like Amazon, and people can order it from anywhere. Mm-hmm. But my website for more information, to see all my books I have available, is drfuhrman.com, is drfuhrman.com.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Joel. It's been a real pleasure. And
my pleasure too. Okay. Best of luck and best of health to you and your listeners.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Eternal Health Podcast. Go to laurarimmer.com to download your free Optimum Health Scorecard and find out your current health score, plus tips, coaching, and training on how to get slim, healed, and energized. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, and we'll catch you next time on Eternal Health.